Rabbi Jacob is the right person to talk about this matter, as he is not only a rabbi but also a soldier in the Israeli army. He also has a very good relationship in everything related to the political sphere of Israel, as we have seen on some occasions meetings with people from the political environment. So he is the right person to address this topic, so let's welcome him. Rabbi, how are you?
Thank you for the invitation, and to everyone who came, I truly appreciate you. You are the future of the world. I think I've said that about 800,000 times on my page. And to start, the topic of Judeophobia. What is Judeophobia? There were two terms that were coined to talk about hatred of Jews: anti-Semitism and Judeophobia. Anti-Semitism, according to experts, is an incorrect term, and the term that should be used is Judeophobia, because Semites no longer exist. And Judeophobia, phobia means fear, but in sociology it means hatred, like xenophobia. So Judeophobia is the correct term for hatred of Jews, but I want to take it a step further than just hatred of Jews. First, I want to read to you from Dr. Gustavo Peretnik, whom I consider the top expert in the field. He wrote this just a few minutes ago. Judeophobia is a mass disorder, a collective emotional immaturity. It's a childish reaction of tantrum and whim that replaces the calm thinking characteristic of maturity. It's a social problem. It's a problem that requires societal work. It's not simply overnight that people stop hating Jews, but it's not just hating Jews for being Jews. It's also about what we represent as Jews. And that includes you as Noahide monotheists. Briefly, I want to explain to you that, in general, what is hated? The Jew is like the representation, the embodiment of this value that people can't stand, that Jew haters can't stand. Because we represent millennia-old values of justice and equality that Judaism has brought to the world. And for you to understand the millennia-long struggle that we, the Jewish people, have carried on for thousands of years, it's that we have represented a system of justice, a system of compassion, of ethics. Other systems of totalitarianism, cruelty, and oppression feel the need to overshadow the values that we represent. And this is explained very well. Maybe you have heard Dr. Francisco Gil White. He has explained this thesis about how Semitism, this idea of freedom, has passed throughout history. And the great ethos of the Jewish people is the exodus from Egypt. What is the exodus from Egypt? It is a slave rebellion in order to have their freedom and to inspire a world where everyone can be free. Imagine all the totalitarian regimes in the world being told this idea that the world is going to be free. They can't stand it. In fact, when Moses and Aaron come to Pharaoh, they say, "Pharaoh, nice to meet you. We're going to take the slaves out of Egypt." What does Pharaoh say? 1 second, slavery is the engine of my empire, and Egypt is not just any empire. It's, let's say, the greatest empire on the planet. It was like the United States times 1,000 back then. And that's why for Pharaoh, hearing words like, "we're going to free the slaves," was like, this can't be happening. And that idea that the world can be free is something that totalitarian regimes and the darkness of the world just can't stand. Another historical example is the Kingdom of Israel, for instance. It sought values of justice and monotheism and all of this, and was opposed to, let's say, the tendencies of idolatry, of burning children, and all those things that ancient peoples practiced. Whereas, for example, empires like the Assyrian, they literally glorified, as part of their religion, glorifying violence and torture. So this, let's say, clash happens throughout history because there will always be a regime that wants to darken the world. But the message of Judaism is the opposite. Now, this message that the world can be better, we Jews have carried it for millennia, and this idea that there will be a better world, those who have read the prophets like Isaiah and all that know that the world will be better. We, the Jewish people, have carried this idea. But there are some people, a group of people who, without being Jewish, can also take part in defending the idea of Judaism, that is Judeophilia. Let's call them, and they are the Noahides. They are those non-Jews who receive the same thing. Covenant, the belief that the world can improve and just societies can be created. That first universal ethical code that was given to Shem, was given to humanity, is the code that you as Noahides have chosen to have. You know, these are the 7 principles: that there is justice, that violence is prohibited, that corruption and theft are rejected, that life and creation, nature are respected. Those are, broadly speaking, what the Noahide laws imply. I'll get to the topic of combating in a moment. Judeophobia, but first I want to explain why I believe you are the best fit. Judeophobia has really always existed, and I think it will always exist until the Messiah comes, but Judeophobia is a very, very ancient problem. But I believe that this group of people who call themselves Noahides could be the cure for Judeophobia. Why? Because the Noahides are not separate from Judaism, they are part of Judaism. Many people believe that Noahidism is a religion, that there is Judaism and Noahidism. So people say, no, I am in Noahidism. But really, no, they are not outside of Judaism because the Noahide system is a subset of Judaism. And therefore, all these ideas that a better world can be made, and all these ideas that Judeophobia is against, the Noahides also have these ideas. That is to say, and this is a prediction I made a couple of years ago, and it's very possible that it will happen. In this next decade or two, Judeophobia is going to shift. No longer attacking Jews, because most likely Jews will start leaving their countries and will come to Israel. As we see the situation in the world, Judeophobia is going to target the Noahides, because the Noahides are this point of, it's like people who have Judaism without being Jewish. So that's why I believe that since the Noahide is someone who has Judaism without converting to Judaism, they are the ones who will carry this future. So I just wanted to give you some context that since the Jewish people carry these universal ideas, and now the Noahides, in this generation they experienced a rebirth. After 2,000 years, when there was no Noahide idea among the nations, it is awakening again. You will also have to fight against Judeophobia, which not only affects Jews, but also affects you precisely for that reason. Now, what is the role of non-Jews in this fight against Judeophobia? Historically, for example, during the Holocaust, there were people who were called the righteous among the nations, not to be confused with the Hasidei Umat Haolam of Maimonides. But during the Holocaust, there were people who were not Jewish, who decided to risk their lives, that is, to put their lives in danger to save Jews. They hid them or gave them shelter. There were diplomats who gave passports to Jews so they could escape, or visas and things like that, and they risked their lives. Today we are living in a social environment. Just like before the Holocaust, if you have ever read about the Jews, we studied this in school. The context of how the Holocaust happened is a copy-paste of what we are living today. The environment in universities, in the media, in public discourse. Before there were no social networks, but the public squares of the past are now like social networks today, one-on-one. It's as if demonizing Jews has become normalized. Now it's something almost legitimate, you know? And the big phenomenon now is that people are supposedly against Zionism, not against Jews. But as we've already analyzed in several videos on my page, if you've seen them, anti-Zionism is Judeophobia. It's the same thing, right? I'm in favor of all countries, of course, except the Jewish one. But what happens is that just like in the Shoah, in the Holocaust, there were righteous among the nations. In this generation, there are too. There can and should be righteous among the nations. There are many people who are actively putting their careers and their relationships with others at risk for the sake of defending these values of a better world that Israel represents. Because think about the situation. We have all these threats that represent a world of darkness like the one Hamas wants, a world of repression, the most radical society you can imagine, like the Taliban times 1,000, right? So, Hamas. And that's the world we're fighting against. I mean, the world we're trying to prevent. There are people who aren't Jewish who understand this and don't want that threat to come to their societies, and that's why they side with Israel and defend the Jewish people, precisely because they understand the consequences this could bring. That's why there are still righteous among the nations today. I'd like to offer some practical advice on this. The first thing is education. It's very, very important for a person to be informed about the history of the Jewish people. Interestingly, there are several books about it because it's so inspiring. That is, when people see and learn about the biography of a people who have managed to be resilient, who have managed to rise from the ashes, and have overcome all these obstacles despite historical adversities. And the people who have read the history of the Jewish people will know that the adversities we Jews have faced throughout history are many, much worse than what we are experiencing today, in the sense that before we didn't have an army and so on. And when people educate themselves about this, they are able to have a deeper analysis in order to have a stronger conviction to make a better world. That is to say, educating yourself helps a lot in knowing how to react to history. The second thing is not to fall for stories. That's a phrase I love. And it's that when you see in the media the genocide, the occupation, colonialism, the settlers, and a bunch of terms, I tell you, question them. Not all the terms are true. Not everything has to be. In fact, I really like to say this because I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't just take what I'm saying either. Question me too. That is, if I say something, check it, go to the data, go to the reality behind it, and see if what I'm saying is correct or not. In other words, don't just believe stories. It's very important because that way people understand that, for example, if people knew the definition of the word genocide, they would realize that Israel is not committing any genocide. These are just narratives, or that there's a Jewish lobby that controls the world. Things like that. So when people start to see a much more complex world, they realize it's all just a story. And that's why I encourage you not to swallow everything whole. Another topic, social media. I recommend sharing the content on social media, although sometimes you feel like a David against a Goliath in the sense that anti-Zionism and Judeophobia are very widespread. They're very big. And it might just be one more post, one less post. It's very difficult. I think Israel already understands that we have to fight this battle and defend the people of Israel, and that's why I believe Israel won't be left behind. There will also be bot farms to fight the bot farms of our enemies. Bots. Do you know what a bot is? They're like on social media, where many phones are programmed to comment on a certain post, or share certain ideas, or to publish certain things. For example, in election campaigns, bots are hired. Political parties hire bots to give them likes or to support them. That way, people get the impression that their party or that this political party is the most popular and so on. The same goes for the campaign against Israel, which has a lot of bots. That's why I think Israel will also fight this later on. And for now, that's why I recommend that people do take part in the discourse on social media. It's not easy. It's not. I mean, it's very exhausting. That's true. And I'm going to talk to you a little about this now. Another thing is the topic of community. When you talk about this topic with family members, well, all my family supports Israel, but for example, people who have relatives who are more hostile toward the Jewish people, toward Israel. For example, someone who became a Noahide and whose family doesn't support their growing connection to Judaism, this causes a lot of conflict with what being Jewish represents, or this Semitism. So that's why communication is good. That is, being able to communicate the idea, obviously without being hostile and without causing too much friction. And here I want to tell you something. Well, I'll tell you this next. Another thing is visible support for Israel, being in favor of Israel. For example, participating in marches. For example, marches have been organized. I recall some were held in Colombia. Marches to support Israel, and people went with Israeli flags and showed their support at events at Jewish memorial ceremonies. For example, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, to take part. And I'm going to tell you something that some Noahides did. For example, I don't know if you know Casanova Claudia Castillo. Maybe you know Colombia. She got in touch. It's an example so that maybe you can get ideas for the respective Noahide communities you are in. She got in touch with the Jewish community of Colombia, with the Confederation of Jewish Communities, to be able to organize meetings about education on Judeophobia or the Holocaust, and they participate in events. And look, I'm going to tell you one. Not everything is dark, even with widespread Judeophobia seen on the streets, online, and in many countries. But there's an advantage for Noahides, at least. You, as Noahides, can take advantage of this wave to get closer to the Jewish communities. Up until now, we Jewish communities have been very closed. I mean, I remember when I lived out there in the diaspora, Jewish communities are very secretive because of fear, because there's a lot of fear. And there are many, I don't know, the Jewish people, it's about this generation, like my generation. We are the grandchildren of people who came from other countries as immigrants, escaping either from violence in Islamic countries or from the Holocaust. I mean, it's about a generation, the one that led Judaism in the past generation, with me, fear. And that's why Jewish communities are very secretive. Now that this fear is here again, the Noahides are those few allies who can open the door between the Jewish world and the non-Jewish world. That is, you can have a closer relationship and take advantage of this moment so that you can have this, let's say, local contact. Because so far, as you know, the Noahide movement has gained significant traction on social media. When we try to make it more tangible, this is one of those opportunities to do so. I want to tell you what the scary side is. It's that it's scary to be judged. It's scary to fight with a family member or with a friend or at work or whatever, or on social media with a stranger. An acquaintance might judge you for posting an image of Israel or take your photo at a march. Any fear about that? I'm going to tell you my conclusion. I'm not telling you to do it. All I'm telling you are recommendations. They're not orders. Obviously, you can take from this whatever you want, but since October 7th and these almost 2 years now of war and seeing the situation in the world, and after those experiences I've had to live through, I don't care about anything. I lost a lot of my fear barrier of what people might say, of all that. It doesn't matter. What I know is that we're going to succeed, and to succeed we have to be very determined, even if they criticize us, even if they hate us, and so on. What we have to do is raise our voices. We shouldn't stay silent, which is why I'm telling you this. Personally, I've overcome my fear, but I know many others haven't. Still, in this crucial time for humanity, Israel and non-Jews, speaking up is what will truly make a difference, so that we can make the world better, in the sense that there is no more Judeophobia, and that there is a greater connection between Noahides and Jews. And my last piece of advice, which I think is very, very possibly the most important one, it's to have a stronger connection with Hashem, knowledge of the Torah, greater emunah. Because if a person lives monotheism, he begins to live an ethical path of a much higher standard. It's not just theorizing, I'm a good person, I help. No, between a person who studies more Torah, understands the laws, the Noahides, how to behave with others, how to behave at work, how to behave with family, with everything, and the person truly begins to make a better world. This is what strengthens the Jewish vision of a better world. And if the Noahides are the greatest example that a better world can be made, that attracts more people to want to be Noahides, because the light shines much brighter. My advice, that's why, to combat Judeophobia: be better people, aligned with the ideas that Judaism offers, which are the Noahide laws. Because like this, the day will come when people will say, wow, if I have to choose between the Taliban or the Noahides, it's going to be Judaism. I choose Judaism and I become a Noahide. Because obviously, who wants a Taliban? Who wants a dictatorship like, I don't know, Maduro's? Who wants that? So people will choose that path. So that's why I think the connection with Hashem is one of the most important factors here. And finally, there's this. We Jews have a culture, a very free culture, truly of freedom. Those who know us know we are a rational culture, one of debating ideas. I want to read you something now, and I had this saved. I want to read a midrash from the Talmud. It's in the tractate Sanhedrin, and it's about the dove. What did the dove say? Hashem. What did the dove say? And there's a version of the midrash in Bereshit Rabbah where the dove says this, or well, hints it to Noah. But what does the dove say to Hashem? I'll read it to you. It comes to the olive tree. There's a verse that says that, well, Noah sent the dove, and the dove took one. An olive tree, an olive leaf in its mouth. And what did the dove say? Rabbi Elazar said, the dove said, before God, master of the world. That is, the dove said to him, Hashem, let my food be as bitter as the olive, and let them be sent by you, and let them not be sweet like honey, and let them not be sent by the hand of flesh and blood. That concludes the midrash. What our sages explain from this midrash. Okay, I'll translate for you what I just said. Again, the dove goes, takes the oil, the leaf, which is bitter, and it says, Hashem, I prefer this bitterness that comes from you to receiving from the hand of man. Why? Because in the ark, no, the dove was fed by Noah, and Noah gave sweet things to the dove, says the midrash. And the dove prefers to receive from Hashem, even if it is bitter. But to deliver this message to humanity, and because it is for Hashem, the dove will do it. Eating something bitter is not natural for the dove. This is the important message I want you to know. The dove represents the message we have in Judaism, that it is better, even if it tastes bitter, even if this effort hurts. It is Hashem's message. It is a better world, and we are that message, like the dove. Remember, that's what the dove does. She tells Noah, now, to Noah, she says now, the flood is over. There is dry land. You can go out now. You can make the korban now. That is, you can now. Do it. Start rebuilding the world. That's the message. That's what the dove can make humanity understand. Noah is humanity. So may it be Hashem's will that we succeed in being like the dove, that we manage to give that message. And that's it.
Thank you, Rabbi. Let's give the opportunity here to Rodrigo from Paraguay. Rodri, you can turn on your microphone. Go ahead.